But welcome, first meeting of the fall. Again, for those of you who don't know, maybe new to the program, my name's Baughn. I'm the head baseball coach at Thomas Jefferson High School. But for Rogue, I coordinate all the mental skills programming that we do. So a lot of you played over the summer, have been in the program for a couple of years. This is my second year with Rogue, so we've kind of built a bit of a structure to the program by now. For the guys that were around this summer, there will be a lot of stuff that we've talked about that we're going to go through again. This will be a little bit more focused on like the utilization of skills, whereas over the summer we kind of talked about some more abstract concepts. You know, we got into athlete identity and things like that, which we can touch on a little bit this fall too. But my goal is to make this a little bit more focused on how can you best utilize the fall to get yourself ready for the spring, because that's kind of the whole point of this. So with that said, I kind of want to get into the goal that I have. And what we're going to focus most on tonight is goals. You all setting goals for yourselves for the fall. The fall, I think, is, how many tournaments, how many weekends is it? 8? 7? Anybody know off the top of their head? I don't know. I can look at the live schedule. But you've got, let's say, 2 months from now until the season's done, probably end of October. And I know we got a couple I think we got a couple of the college guys in here as well that are off to go compete in the fall for their schools. But ultimately, the goal for this and the point of this is to get you in a place where I think the spring season's opens up for Chess on March 6th. I think that's when the first games can be played. So to put yourself in position on March 6th to be at the level that you want, on the roster that you want, in position for you to have the best spring season as possible. So all of this stuff we're going to talk about through the fall over the next month or two, however long it is going to be with the intent of building your skills to have you in a spot in the spring where you can be not only physically prepared to play, but mentally prepared to give your best as well, to have as much success as possible. So, again, you guys that have been a part of this, the ones that did this last fall, I try to open this up to a little bit of engagement. Obviously, I know, being on computer is not ideal for that. For those of you, I think everybody went through online school with COVID. It's really easy to kind of just disengage and separate yourself. Hopefully, because none of you are required to be here, this isn't school, that you're willing to be engaged. And I'm going to give you a lot of information, but at the same time, I hope that you'll engage with the information. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to talk or you have to, give a bunch of opinions or anything like that. But that kind of starts this process of like, what do you think it means to be engaged in this material? And for me, the hope that I have anyway for you is that you'll take something away each and every week, something that you can use to build your kind of tool set that you can have then going into the spring, something that you can take to work into this week and your workouts this week, going into your first games coming up. Take something from these nights that you can utilize for yourself to apply to whatever it is in terms of your own development. So for tonight, it's going to be about setting goals, setting proper goals. How many of you have set goals for yourself for the fall? I only have about 12 of you on screen. You can do like a little hand raise thing, I think, or hopefully most of you have. And if you haven't, that's what this is for. But to that point, there are goals and there are effective goals. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this idea of SMART goals. You've probably heard that through education. I do a little bit of work with our gifted and talented students at TJ as well. And they talk about ALPs, advanced learning plans. Some of you may have something like that. You may have some kind of plan for yourself academically to improve in whatever area that is. And if you've gone through that process, there are a couple of pieces with these goals that make goals more effective or not. So I'll actually ask, and this will kind of start some of this interaction. For those of you that have been a part of the program and you know what we've talked about with goal setting, what are some of those pieces that are necessary for your goals to be effective? And you can just unmute yourself and shout it out. You don't have to raise hands or anything like that. Or what do you think? Even if you haven't been in the program and you just kind of think like this is what makes an effective goal, what do you think are those things, those qualities that make effective goals? Nobody has any ideas. Well, somebody give me an example of a goal that you set for yourself. Go ahead, George.
I think it's pretty easy to set goals that are just based around like physical numbers, like for pitchers, like hitting a certain speed for a pitcher. But what is important is trying to find what you need to do to get there.
Okay, so we've got one aspect of that. What George is talking about is what we kind of refer to as outcome goals. You have, like George said, you have a velocity that you want to hit, or you have like an ERA that you want to have. You have a batting average that you want to have. Those are important pieces. Why is it important to have something like that? Why is it important to have those numbers or that data, whatever that data point is? Why do we want to have that? I'll ask this. For those of you that pitch, because I was a pitcher as well, for those of you that pitch, how many of you have set a goal for yourself this fall to increase your velocity? Everybody, right? That's probably the main goal of any pitcher in terms of development, is to throw harder. Why do you set that as a goal? Why is a goal to throw harder? To increase velocity. What does that do? Go ahead, Keller.
Well, I think it like shows that you're improving as a player, so it helps you get better and stuff like that.
All right. So getting into this idea of improvement, if we didn't have a way of tracking improvement, how do we know if we're actually getting better? So one of the pieces that's really important in terms of goal setting is having something that's specifically measurable. For baseball, velocity is a really easy one, right? You can measure how hard you throw. You can measure how fast the ball comes off your bat. Like we can actively measure these things. And in translating that, if I'm throwing harder as a pitcher, I'm probably going to be a little bit better. I'm probably more effective throwing 85 than I am throwing 82, right? Might not be a huge difference, but more than likely, I'm going to get more guys out throwing 85 than I am 82, as long as I have all these other qualities of, throwing effective strikes and off-speed pitches and so on and so forth. If I'm a hitter and my average exit velocity goes from 86 to 94, right, I'm probably going to be a better hitter. When I'm hitting the ball, I'm hitting it harder, I'm creating more damage. So the ultimate piece of goals and what makes effective goals, or the purpose that we set goals, is to provide some kind of roadmap for ourselves. How many of you have gone into a practice? Maybe you don't even know what's going on in practice that day. There's no outline of what you're doing. You go through practice, and at the end of the day, you realize, like, man, I didn't really do a whole lot there, or I wasn't really engaged with it, right? And you almost feel like you waste a day. That's what we want to avoid, and that's what goals can help us avoid. So as you're going through, many of you have set goals for yourself. If you haven't, think about, like, what's a goal that I can set for myself that's going to give me direction this fall, that's going to allow me to create a map for myself on how I can get better. Not just did I get better, but specifically, what do I want to get better at? I want to be a better base runner. Great. I'm going to make sure when I get on base that I'm really cognizant about what my lead is. Like, I want to make sure I'm hitting a 12-foot lead, a 13-foot lead, whatever it is, right? I really want to work on my dirt read. So I'm going to be really aggressive to try to track the ball. And when I see dirt, I'm going, right? I want to challenge myself on those things. Those are really specific goals that you can set, and they're things that you can measure. There was a dirt ball. Did I take the base? Yes or no? Right? And you measure how many times did you have a dirt ball and how many times did I take a base? At the plate, I want to be a more aggressive hitter. How many times did I look at strikes? Did I feel like I had a hittable pitch and I didn't swing versus did swing? So be really specific with what those are. So again, important pieces. We want to make sure that things are measurable. We want to have data that we can actively measure. Sometimes that's not easy to do. Sometimes you have to be a little bit creative. And obviously, I'm happy to help with that. If anybody has any ideas or any questions about like how can I measure this thing that I want to get better at. Keller, actually, I'll bring up your example. I know you talked about over the summer, like you wanted to have more fun playing the game. And we talked a little bit, well, how do you measure having fun, right? How can you do that? And we kind of brainstorm like what makes the game fun for you. A lot of times guys want to be a better teammate. Well, what makes you a better teammate? How do you measure being a better teammate? So there are things that you may have to think outside of the box a little bit, but set goals for yourself that where there's something that you can measure, something that you can track to see if you've improved your performance, if you've gotten better through the year. So those are a couple of big things. Make sure it's measurable. Make sure you have data that you actually can measure. Make sure you're setting goals for yourself, not only these large month-long, 2-month-long, year-long goals, but setting smaller goals for yourself. So I'll bring up the idea of velocity again. I want to increase my velocity. I want to throw 3 miles an hour harder by March than I do right now. Okay, that's great. That's good. It provides your pathway. Now the important piece of that is how do you get there? So I'm going to give you all a minute, and you can do this. I think it's better if you write it down. But you guys know from the summer, using your phone is fine. If some of you are on your phone right now, take mental notes, whatever. I want you to think about the goal that you've set. How many things can you control about that goal? I want you to list everything that you can control and that you think directly or indirectly, everything that you think affects your ability to achieve that goal. And as you're thinking of them, I want you to just kind of open up your mic and say, like, what is it that you can think of specific to your goal that is within your control that's going to affect your ability to achieve that? So start bringing up some ideas, and I bet it'll spark some other guys too. So what is it within your goal that you have the ability to control, that you can account for, that you can then create another goal for that's going to affect your bigger, broader outcome? Go ahead, Tyler.
Get in the gym more and like work your ass off.
What is that? Okay, perfect. I love the enthusiasm behind it. What does that mean? How often is more?
Well, as often as you can. Just do anything you can. I don't really know.
So specific to, is this one that's specific to you? Is this like something that's directly related to the goal that I have?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you going to do? How many times are you going to go to the gym?
At least 3 times a week.
Perfect. Okay. Do you have a plan for what you're going to do those 3 times a week?
I don't know. Normally Garrett gives me something to do.
Perfect. So you're going to have some kind of structure behind it. Are you going to go alone or try to go with somebody else?
I haven't thought about that.
Okay. So that's something, and that's individual preference. Some guys would rather work alone. Some guys need somebody else to push them. So like, what's going to be most effective for you? Think about that and plan it out. And this is what I mean by like making things specific. Yeah, I want to go get in the gym more. I want to get stronger. All right, how am I going to do that? What can I commit to? What can I ensure that it's realistic for me to do? Don't work out 7 days a week. That's counterproductive. 3, 4, 5 days a week, great, right? Do something that you know that you're going to hold yourself accountable to that's realistic for you. If you set a goal of working out 5 days a week and you know you don't have time for that, you're setting yourself up for frustration. Because then when you can only go 3 days a week, you think, well, shit, now I'm not doing what I need to do, right? So that's another piece is like make sure that you're doing what's manageable for you. What are other things that you're thinking of? Things that are within your control? Go ahead, Keller.
Well, for spring, like my goal would be to make varsity for Heritage. So like I could control working harder this fall in practice and off off the field to
Okay, what
get
is
better.
working harder? What does that mean? How do you work harder?
Like in practice, going at game speed, working harder than others to try and beat them out and get their spot.
Here's one thing that I'll challenge on that real quick, and this is a really common coach thing of like, and we tell ourselves that it's a good thing of comparing ourselves to others, working harder than others. All that does is ensure you beat that other person, right? Who knows how hard that person's working? So I would say refrain from comparison goals of I want to do this more than somebody else. Keep it internal, keep it within yourself. You know how hard you can work, right? You know what your highest intensity is. So hold yourself accountable to your highest intensity or whatever your hard work is rather than comparing it to somebody else's hard work. And that's a pretty common thing. I know I fall into that trap every once in a while as a coach of like doing this kind of comparison thing. And I challenge you to really step away from that. Try really hard not to compare yourself to somebody else. Because I think comparison, there's good and bad with it. But I think you can be most effective when you're staying internal within yourself, challenging yourself to your highest ability rather than focusing on how can I beat somebody else. And Keller, again, getting more specific with that. Like, how often do you need to go at game speed? Can you decide like when you're going game? Because you may not want to go game speed every single rep, right? So you may need to fine tune of like, all right, what do I need to do this practice? Maybe some practices you need to do a little bit more than other practices, something like that. So just think about that. And that can be a really good goal each practice for yourself. Like this one, I really want to focus on trying to do things at game speed. Whereas in another practice, I need to work on a little bit more fundamental things. So I need to step back and slow down a little bit. Other things in your control related to your goals. Go ahead, Landon.
Attitude.
All right. In what way?
Like not getting all hurt about when something doesn't go your way or not bringing your teammates down.
So here's what I'll ask, and this is good for everybody. I'm really interested in like cognitive neuroscience and how the brain works and things like that. The way Landon, that's a really good goal to have and really good thing to think about how that affects your ability to achieve your goal. What I'll say is change the framing and how you set your goals away from not doing something. So I'm going to give you all a task real quick. And you guys that have been within the program for a little bit will remember this. But I'm going to give you something. I want you to not think of a pink elephant. Immediately, what comes to mind when you don't think of a pink elephant? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
A pink elephant.
A pink elephant, right? Because you have to acknowledge the thing that you don't want to do before you can do something else. So landing to your point, to your kind of your goal, that thing you can control, instead of like not doing something, not getting down on myself, not bringing teammates down, what can you do in an active sense? What are the things that you can do in order to not do that? It's tough, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So think about that. Like, instead of not bringing my teammates down, what can I do to engage and like energize my teammates, right? What can I do to keep myself engaged in the game? What can I do? And this is something I dealt with a lot as a younger player. What can I do to control my emotions and the way that I react when things don't go well? How can I control my anger, my frustration, my fear, my feeling ashamed of myself, whatever it is? How can I manage that and move forward with it? Not saying that you can't feel that way, but when those feelings inevitably do come up, what can you do to then change course and like reset yourself onto a better path? And some of that stuff we'll talk about through the fall. We'll talk about some skills and some things that you can do, that all of you can do with breathing and self-talk and things like that, that can help manage those. Other things that you can control. Go ahead, Tracy.
I feel like going to private sessions, whether it's like hitting, fielding, or pitching,
Okay.
one-on-one with like Ryan or Jordan or RC
Yep.
is really good.
Taking advantage of extra coaching, taking advantage of one-on-one. Think about how often do you want to go? How often can you go? Once a week, twice a week, whatever it is, right? You set that for yourself. Good. I'll give you a couple of others. Your sleep, making sure you're getting enough sleep. Your nutrition, making sure you're eating well, right? Your time management. You guys are back in school. You're back to being at school 8 hours a day, having homework, studying, doing the things that you have to do outside of that while you're playing travel baseball, while you're playing 5 games over 3 days, right? Your weekends are going to be taken up. Spring is a little bit different. You guys don't play on Sundays in the spring. Like there's no interaction on Sundays. That's not true in the fall. You're going to have games on Sundays, right? You got to test on Monday. You got to manage your time. So taking account into those, figuring out a way to keep yourself organized where, I know I got 2 tests coming up this week and I've got practice 3 days a week and we got 5 games over the weekend. How am I going to manage all of that? Those are things that you can control, you can take account of. Because what happens is you lose track of that. Now you got a couple of bad grades. That increases your stress. Now you're up late studying. You're not getting as effective of a workout. You're not eating as well as you should be, right? You're not getting as much sleep. Sleep deprivation is one of the worst things physically that you can do to yourself in terms of development. Your brain needs the rest. Your body needs the rest. Prioritize sleep. Prioritize sleep over everything if you can. And again, that you need to get 8 to 10 hours. That's a third of the day that you don't have to do other things. You've got a third of the day at school. So what are you doing with that last 8 hours? How are you managing that time during the week in order to best utilize it and best train yourself so you can be the best version of yourself in March? And it's a lot, man. It's a lot. I don't know how many of you have seen Shohei Ohtani's dream board that he made when he was in high school. Ohtani is the best player. I believe the best player that's ever played baseball. I think he's the best that's ever lived. Physically, genetically, there are some things that he has that just people don't. But he allowed himself to get to there because he was so devoted to managing his time and managing his body and training himself in every way possible to get to where he wanted to be. How much are you willing to do with that? And this is where goal setting comes in and holding yourself accountable to those. Understand the things that you are willing to give up, and maybe more importantly, the things that you're not willing to give up. You guys probably play video games, right? I play video games too. I still game to this day. It's something that I really enjoy doing. It's almost a stress reliever for me. It's not something that I'm willing to give up. So I have to make sure that I can fit that time in along with all the other stuff that I need to do in order to achieve my goals personally. So you really have to challenge yourself. What are you willing to do to get to the point of achieving your goal? You guys that want to make varsity for the first time, or you want to be a starter instead of a bench player, right? You want to get as many innings as possible. What are you willing to do to get to that point? And that's where your goals come in. And what I would recommend is as you set these goals, as you identify these goals, put them in a place where you're going to see them every day. When I was growing up, before we had cell phones everywhere and you had all this stuff, I wrote it down on my mirror in my bathroom on sticky notes, put them on my desk. I have one of our players at TJ. He does his goals in his notes app, takes a screenshot of it and sets it as his phone background. So every time he opens up his phone, his goals are right there in front of him. It's a constant reminder for him. So figure out the best way for you. What can I do individually to hold myself accountable to my goals? Do I need to tell somebody else? Tell somebody else. Tell your parents. Tell your teammates. Do I need to keep it to myself? I don't want other people to know. That's fine too. So make sure you're clear with your goals. Make sure you have them measurable. Make sure they're realistic. Okay? You're probably not going to throw 95 by March, so maybe don't make that a goal for yourself. Set something that's realistic for you to achieve, and realistic is relative, right? Talk to Ryan, talk to Jordo, talk to Demo, talk to your coaches about what's a realistic goal for me. What do you think that I can achieve? And then set that. And then when you surpass it, great, you can adjust it. You can always adjust your goals after a month, after 2 months, whatever it is. So again, your challenge is to set goals for yourself and think about all the things that are within your control that will affect your ability to achieve that goal or not. The more things that you can think of, the more variables you have accounted for, the more control you have over your goal. You're not going to be able to control everything, but you want to identify as many things as you can. This will help guide you into how you approach practice. So this is the last piece that we'll touch on. It's kind of related to goals, but a little bit off of it as well before we finish up for tonight. How many of you have heard the term deliberate practice? Ants, I'll ask you, what does deliberate practice mean? Like, what do you think of when you hear that?
Coming to practice with like a purpose and playing with intent, and like knowing what you need to work on and how you're going to get it done.
Exactly. The real challenge with baseball specifically, because there is so much downtime, is staying engaged. It becomes really easy to go through the motions even in games sometimes, but definitely in practice. You're practicing for 2 hours. You may get 15 or 20 reps at a specific position, 25 to 30 swings, but there's a lot of time that you're not doing anything. How can you manage yourself to where when you get your opportunity that you're fully engaged with it? So when I played in high school, I was on an AAU team, and we had these shirts, and on the back it said, "Perfect practice makes perfect." And everybody thought that was an awesome saying at the time. You probably heard the idea of practice makes perfect. That's not necessarily true. If you practice horrible habits, you're creating bad habits, right? So how you practice determines perfection, I guess, for lack of a better word. So we had these shirts of perfect practice makes perfect. That's not ideal either, right? What I would think of is engaged practice makes success. Like engaged practice gets you toward your goal. Deliberate practice. So setting a goal for yourself in practice, committing to that goal, holding yourself accountable to it, right? Are you really engaged in that rep? Are you really engaged in practice right now? Did you do everything that you needed to, or everything that you had the ability to do in that practice? You're not going to be at 100% every single time you go out to play. Can you give everything that you have? Can you give all the engagement that you have? It's tough when you know you got a paper to write the next day and you have to go to practice to focus solely on practice. But can you do it enough to where when you have the reps that you have, the opportunities that you have, that you're engaged with those? Because that's the important piece. Taking advantage of the reps that you have. Focus on that. What can I do every time I'm out on the field to get as much out of this as I can? And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be 100% max effort every single time, because that might not be the goal of whatever that rep is. Set goals for yourself within those reps. Pitchers, set a goal. Every pitch you throw, have a purpose with that pitch. Hitters, every time you're in the cage, create a goal for that at bat or for that rep, for that round. So you're not just going through the motions and you realize 6 swings into a 10 swing round, I haven't really had a purpose with this. I'm just kind of swinging for swinging's sake. Create a purpose for yourself. You guys have any questions? All right. Ans can speak to this. I'm a big proponent of journaling, of reflection, of keeping track of things. So get yourself a notebook for the fall. Write down your stuff inside of it. Take it to practice with you. Reflect on your rounds. Reflect on your reps. Reflect on the coaching that you're getting. Take notes of it. Write down as much stuff as you can. Utilize this time. All the guys in here that are seniors, that are upperclassmen will tell you how fast it goes. And so you want to take advantage of this time as much as you can. Do everything within your power to reach your individual potential. All right, all this stuff that we're going to be talking about is reaching your individual potential. There's only so much that you can do physically, right? You have a ceiling. You're only going to throw so hard or whatever. We want you to hit your individual ceiling as often as possible. So that's the goal of all of this. Take as much as you can from this stuff. As you have questions, please reach out. You guys can all hit me up on GroupMe. As we continue to go, I'm hoping to have these things as more interactive, where you guys are kind of reflecting with each other and talking about your experiences with each other. But obviously, I'm here for that as well, one-on-one. So if y'all need anything one-on-one, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm gonna post my cell number in the GroupMe as well, so you guys all have that too. If you do reach out, text instead of call if I don't have your number yet. I'm pretty good about getting back quickly. Just say, hey, Graham, this is, whoever from Rogue had a question for you, whatever. And I'll get back to you within a couple hours probably, unless it's in the middle of the day at school. All right, guys, appreciate your time. I'll hang out for a minute if anybody has any last second questions. Otherwise, good luck this week. I think the 18U team, y'all have a tournament this week. Is that right? And then I'm not sure about the younger teams. I saw an update in it, but I won't be at any games through the fall because we've got our stuff at TJ that I have to run and concessions and all that stuff. So I'll only see you guys here. If you really have a game, like something that you want me to come see at a practice or game, let me know and I can do my best to make it. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to, but if there's something that you want to just check out, video's great, send me video, something like that. Or again, we can have one-on-one talks. That's kind of what I'm here for. So these meetings will be a little bit more generalized. If you have specific questions about yourself, about your own development or your own mental skills or mindset or anything like that, let me know. All right, guys, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.